I think its beginnings are great. The beginnings of a church always start with a vision, and this is no different. There was a guy called Alan Nunn, who was the pastor at that time of the Sunshine St Albans Church. And he discovered basically there was no Baptist churches between sort of Sunshine St Albans, Footscray and Bacchus Marsh. And so there was a church planting vision. And the very first meeting, and I regard this as the birth of the church, was on a Tuesday night, the first week of March, thus our anniversary, 1969. Which, for a bit of context, 3 months before Neil Armstrong walked on the moon.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
I remember when we first started coming to Werribee Baptist Church. We'd been here a couple of months, and it dawned on me at that moment. I was just worshiping God and that, and I thought, wow, this church is what I would have envisioned when we were church planting here.
Oh, the great thing about that first Tuesday night meeting, they took an offering, $5.30. $5.30, and I've got the receipt from that. It was counted and banked by David McNamara. A key people right from that planting time was a couple by the name of Roger and Leah Roberts. And they opened their home in Werribee. And whilst the initial meeting happened at a house in Laverton, very quickly the Roberts became the key, the home base for the church right back there in the late 60s, 1969, 70 and so on. They've been people who've given a lot, and we acknowledge them. In fact, by 3 months in, they've actually been 3 meetings a week. Sunday morning, Sunday night, Tuesday night. And so I had to move out of there and went to the Mossfield Primary School. After that, in the Mossfield Hall, because the Mossfield Hall was a public hall, and before they could have church on Sunday, they'd have to clean out the beer bottles from Saturday night's parties and things along those lines. Isn't that beautiful? I think it was around 72 that the first full-time pastor came, Jeff Rouse. But as the congregation continued to grow and there was a need for a building, and so some land was bought down the road. I believe that building was opened in 1977 to great fanfare and great thanksgiving. The Baptist Union of Victoria's, I think, Home Mission Board was a part of that process to help the church become established with its first building. And Jeff finished after that building, 1977, and he moved on, and then Joe Westlake came in 1978. Joe had a vision for establishing a school, establishing a retirement village, and getting the next building. Because they'd grown out of it. They were 2 morning services, they were full, they needed to think about the next building. What we now know as the Ministry Centre, that building was a complete copy of a church in Western Australia. But again, what happened also in those days is you didn't have all the formal building codes and all those things that we have today. And so it was very participatory. There's working bees and people able to move around the building as it's being constructed. It was opened with great fanfare on July the 10th, 1988. The old timers talk about the procession going from the old building into the new building. Though it was July, it looks like it was a reasonable day, and so people were able to walk up the road from the old building into the new building. It was a great day of rejoicing when that building opened. We're now talking around the early 80s. Joe Westlake, he bought 50 acres of land from the Urban Land Authority, right here, this whole corner of Heath Sterrimut, right down past what's now the fire station, right up to the creek. 50 acres for, I think it was $280,000. Didn't have any money. Minor detail. Worked out a repayment plan. The first $10,000 anonymously given. The church then gave the second lot of $20,000. In that meantime, they then subdivided half the land, and a developer who was to build the retirement centre actually bought the other half of the land for $280,000. So the school essentially had its land for free, with an incredible faith step. But from the church perspective, we had 4.5 acres of land on this prime corner. In those days, it was just the edge of town. It was just the road was not made at Heath Road past the intersection with Derrimut. But we bought this land for $20,000. When we did the building project in 2015, this land was valued at $6 million. An incredible gift from God. We genuinely believe this was a gift from God. Just remarkable.
the stories that we've heard was, of course, Joe Westlake had the vision. He got a whole lot of people involved with it from other churches as well, but mainly from here. People like Nian Thompson on the first board, and Ron Moffat. Ron Moffat was on the first board.
McNamara's.
And the McNamara's. Sayers family. People worked volunteering. The school would not have got past that first shaky period when all schools are starting if it hadn't been for the incredible effort of people in this congregation in giving selflessly of their time and energy and their skills. So that connection has been there for all the years.
It would seem to me that Joe has thought, well, building, tick, Christian school, tick, retirement village, tick. Feels like he's done that which God has called him to do. And so he prepares to leave at the end of 1988, early 1989. Gets involved actually in the church plant, which is now the Point Cook Church. What he did before he left was he saw that it wasn't just about building a building, it was about building people. And so he recruited John Evans to be his associate pastor. And so John Evans became then the senior pastor after Joe had moved on, and spent about 13 years here. I went over and read every annual report through the 90s because I'm interested in that sort of stuff. And I describe it as unspectacular but significant, the things that were occurring in that time. A lot of ministries were established into that time that continue on. Ministries of small groups, of outreach ministries, ministry into the retirement village, play groups and things like that. A lot of those have their birth in this particular time.
When we came in 94, before we knew it, we were having a home group held at our place. It was organised that we just had, I think, about 4 or 5 families come, and we would share a meal together because we wanted the children included.
It was a difficult finish for John's ministry, there's no doubt about that. I think we could all have to acknowledge that. And John finished around 2001, and the church had a period it was unsettled. And some interim ministry, some key interim ministry happened at that time. I particularly would want to draw attention to Bill Brisbane, who led the church on 2 different occasions and in 2 pretty stressful times, and did an amazing job of just keeping the church calm and on track and so on. Kevin Yelverton served as an interim minister into that time as well, through later in the 2000s, 2002, 2003, bookended by Bill Brisbane into that time. I came in 2004, and a generation younger, and with a little baby, and so it was a new time. And then something significant happened for Lynn and I personally, for our family, and then for the church. We had some pretty significant battles with infertility, and we were incredibly grateful to have our one child, Jessie, and then all of a sudden Lynn got pregnant, naturally, not through IVF, but where Jessie had come from. Lynn was nearly 41 at the time, and there's this growing sense within me that this was really significant. Her name is Mia Claire, and it's a deliberate anagram of a miracle because she was a miracle for us. I believe that Mia was not just a blessing for us, not just for Lynn and I, but she was a prophetic sign for the church. This sort of middle-aged church, is there any more life in this church? I'm very glad to report that's actually what happened. That we had this whole season of growth. God, there's a new amazing thing amongst us of growth in those 2006 to 2012 time frame. And the church doubled in its size. We added the refugee congregation. And so by 2011, there would be some days we'd have over 1,000 people come through the doors.
Somos brasileiros, amamos a igreja, que Deus abençoe a igreja em Werribee. Amém.
So I came to Werribee Baptist when I was 22 and started teaching, and I loved this church. I met my husband. We got married in this church. We had 2 little boys. They were both dedicated here. They went through the Sunday school program, and then as a family, the church sent us to Ethiopia where we served for a couple of years. We came back and we've been fully engaged. The children have come right through the youth program, and now they're young adults and they serve. This has been a great church for our family to come to and to grow up in, and now we're sending them into the next generation.
We were asked to lead a group of young marrieds with Mel and Carly Green and a few others. And again, it was a fantastic time. We just loved it. And then the latest one we had was a wonderful group of oldies like ourselves. The conversation was amazing and lots of laughter, which was very good for us. And I think the blessing for us personally has been people older than ourselves who've come to keep studying the scriptures. And I think that is
it's so
amazing.
Inspiring.
It's so inspiring.
I mean, the other key element that happened in that 2006 to 2011 timeframe is that we added staff, and the staff were incredibly significant to our growth. Kimberly Smith was already on staff when I arrived, and had begun in 2003 and just started out with youth and children's ministry, but it made a spectacular impact. Jeff Benson joined staff, I think it was 2007, and again made a significant impact to our worship, to our small groups. And together with Mandy as the admin, we had this sort of really fantastic group of 4, and other staff joined us around. Every staff person joined from within the church in that time. I mentioned how that the church was full. Our building was no longer sufficient. So we had to start thinking and praying and planning and strategizing for a new building. This was Joe's vision all along, that the building, the ministry centre that we now call it, was always going to be a stepping stone to something bigger. At our 40th anniversary, I remember him saying to me, "So Mark, when are you going to build this new shed out here?" And over a significant period of time, it's probably about 8 years from go to woe before we were able to move in. And by the way, that's pretty normal to be able to see that through. We were able to see this building constructed. I'm sitting here in a miracle. It was opened in 2015, and we're incredibly thankful to God. Tony Robinson and I would go to these site meetings every week, and we'd be sort of on budget but ahead of schedule. I don't know how that works, but it worked. And so we were going well until right at the very end. Our very last thing that we needed to get our certificate of occupancy, to be able to legally operate in this building, was we had to pass a water flow test. The fire hydrants had to release enough water, and we failed the test. And it was a huge problem because, like, we can't make more water flow into the block. We had our very last site meeting. It was a Wednesday, and the manager of the building company, who we utilised, said, "We've got this strategy. We're going to retest it with a different company." He said, "Cross your fingers." I said, "Mate, I can do better than that." And so I got texting to Jeff and Kim and Mandy. I said, "Pray now." We had the water flow test, and we passed the test. Nobody knows why. The building guys could not account for it in the natural. I mean, the guy wrote up his report and said it was probably something to do with the building works at the plaza that was stopping the water flow. But it defies natural logic. But God did it.
I realized that, this didn't just happen overnight. At that point, Werribee was about 42 years old, the church was. And so there was a lot of hard work, a lot of history, a lot of people, blood, sweat, tears, prayers, and just lots of ministry for 40-something years, leading to that place where I got to see it and think, oh, that's the kind of church I would have envisioned. But again, there's so much there that's the untold story, and the things that maybe weren't that spectacular in any one event, but over the full history, you see the significance of that. And we are so blessed. In fact, as I sit here today as the lead pastor now, and this building that we built 3 years ago, just over 3 years ago, I'm so blessed to be able to just walk into that, have the spaces already ready and things like that. And then I can just add the vision and add some ministry to it, to where we're going to take that, how we're going to use that. But all the work that had to get done for me to just walk into that space, it's almost not fair. But I certainly will accept that as God's blessing.
At its heart, the church is not afraid to preach Jesus. Whenever we come here every Sunday, what we hear is an unashamed declaration of the gospel and who Jesus is and what we as a church stand for. So we really love that. The worship's great. And there's a great mix and diversity of people. And so we just feel really comfortable here.
Just being in a church where everyone's on the same page. I love that we're all trying our best to head in the same direction. And it's a bit of can get a bit messy at times, but there's a whole lot of grace, and we're determined that what we're doing is important.
For me, I like the Werribee Baptist Church because I love its youth program. The kids, my 3 boys, are well taken care of. They are growing up knowing Christ and the purpose for God's purpose for their lives.
We're the Kidsman team and we love kids!
Its history is important, and it's some people have been here like you for the whole 50 years, but it's seeing it change, it's seeing it evolve, and that's what church should do really, and change with the generations. And Werribee's grown and there's so much to do. It's exciting to see what'll come next.
I guess one of the things I love about WBC is the fact that this giant community of people has become, I guess, a second family. I love hanging out on a Sunday with all of my mates and meeting new people, and then on a Monday night with our small group who have become, you know, the family that we get to choose, I guess, and I love doing life with them.
As I think about the future of Werribee Baptist Church, it's kind of cliche or colloquial or whatever, but I really do believe that the best is yet to come. Our best days are still in front of us and all those things, because I've got in my heart the idea of multiplication, reproduction, and what we're becoming right now is something that we feel is worth reproducing. We have resources, we have abilities, we have experience and all those kinds of things, and we can reproduce that in other places. In the next few years, I envision us having campuses around Wyndham. It's at least starting in Wyndham, because Wyndham is one of the fastest growing communities in Australia, and there's 4 prep classes born every week here in Wyndham. It's very multicultural. There's 120 something different nationalities represented here, and our church, the past, the history has been great and solid and everything, but everything's changed in that time, and where we sit today and where we're going into the future is going to look very, very different. Because one of the things I've heard recently and that really resonates with my heart is if we are going to reach people that nobody else is reaching, we've got to be doing things that nobody else is doing. And a lot of people are doing a lot of things around here and around the world that we're learning from, but we want to see this community and the world reach for Christ, and we're going to have to do that differently than we've done before. And that's that's actually to honor the past. One of the things that we think sometimes is that as we change and things don't look anything like the past looked, we think that's dishonoring the past or disrespecting the past. But the reality is, those people who started this place, they envisioned it being very different. They envisioned people being reached and growing and all that. And if we're going to honor them and their commitment and their investment, all the people that have gone before us and worked before us, then we have to be changing to keep growing and to keep building. If we just leave things the same way, if we stop changing, we never do anything different, then we're going to actually stagnate and start declining. And the vision that people had 50 years ago will end up dying if we don't position ourselves for the future.